In the dim glow of a London fog, a single clue shattered the silence, a whispered confession from a dying man, pointing to a mind so twisted it ensnared even the great detective himself. Welcome to Hercule Poirot and the Final Psychological Trap, where genius meets its darkest mirror. Grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let the mystery unfold. If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Chapter 1. The Shadowed Invitation. The rain hammered against the tall windows of Poirot's modest flat in Whitehaven Mansions, each drop a relentless drumbeat that echoed the detective's growing unease. Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian with the egg-shaped head and the impeccable moustache, sat in his favourite armchair, a cup of tisane steaming beside him. At 65, he had seen it all. Murders in country estates, poisons in high society teas, and betrayals that twisted like vines. But this letter, delivered by hand that very evening, felt different. It was sealed with black wax, embossed, with a symbol Poirot recognized from old psychology texts. A labyrinth, the mark of the mind's deepest traps. He adjusted his spectacles and read aloud to himself, his voice a soft murmur in the empty room. Dear Monsieur Poirot, the letter began, penned in elegant script that betrayed no tremor. You, who unravel the threads of human deception with such finesse, are invited to the Isle of Echoes. There, in the heart of the Atlantic, a game awaits. One that will test not your logic, but the very essence of your soul. Come alone, or the trap snaps shut on innocence. Your host, Dr. Elias Voss. Poirot's fingers tightened on the paper. Dr. Voss, a name whispered in academic circles. A psychologist whose experiments on the human psyche had bordered on the unethical. Rumours spoke of patients lost to madness, of sessions that peeled back layers until only raw fear remained. Why him? Poirot wondered, his grey cells humming. Was this a challenge or a lure? He leaned back, staring at the flickering gas lamp. The invitation included a one-way ticket on the midnight ferry from Southampton, departing in less than 2 hours. No details on return. No mention of companions. Poirot's mind raced through possibilities. A hoax, perhaps, from some disgruntled former client, or something more sinister, like the cases he'd solved in Styles or on the Orient Express, where vanity and greed hid behind polite facades. Yet, this felt personal. Voss's work delved into psychological traps, illusions that made the sane doubt, their sanity, manipulations that turned allies into foes. Poirot had always prided himself on his orderly mind, his reliance on facts over feelings. But lately, small doubts had crept in, nightmares of unsolved riddles, echoes of voices from past victims. Was this the final test? With a decisive nod, Poirot rose, slipping the letter into his pocket alongside his ever-present watch chain. He packed lightly, a valise with spare collars, his patent leather shoes, and a small vial of lavender water to soothe the nerves. Chief Inspector Japp, his old friend from Scotland Yard, had rung earlier about a routine theft, but Poirot brushed it off. Mon ami, he'd said. Sometimes the shadows call louder than the light. Now, as he stepped into the cab bound for the docks, the rain seemed to whisper warnings. The driver, a burly man with a scarred cheek, glanced back. Isle of Echoes, Gov. That's a queer spot. Old asylum turned fancy retreat, they say, but folks don't come back the same. The ferry cut through the choppy waters like a knife, its engines groaning under the weight of secrecy. Poirot stood at the rail, collar turned up against the spray, watching Southampton's lights fade. Only a handful of passengers dotted the deck, a nervous young woman clutching a locket, an elderly professor buried in a book on Freud, and a silent pair of twins whose identical stares unnerved even him. No one spoke of Voss or the island. As dawn broke, grey and unforgiving, the Isle of Echoes emerged, a jagged rock crowned by a sprawling manor house, its towers piercing the mist like accusatory fingers. Docks creaked underfoot as Poirot disembarked, a solitary figure amid the gulls' cries. A chauffeured car awaited, its engine idling like a predator's breath. The driver, face hidden in shadow, nodded curtly. "Dr. Voss sends his regards, monsieur." The drive wound up steep cliffs, the manor looming larger with every turn. Echoes Manor, built in the Victorian era as a sanatorium for the mentally afflicted, now served as Voss's private laboratory. Whispers of its history flooded Poirot's thoughts. Patients strapped to chairs for echotherapy, where recorded voices replayed their fears until confession broke them. Voss had bought it a decade ago, turning it into a haven for the elite seeking mind cures, or so the papers claimed. But Poirot knew better. Scandals had followed Voss from Vienna to London, accusations of pushing minds over the edge. The car halted at iron gates that swung open with a mechanical whine. Inside, the grounds were manicured to perfection. Rose gardens blooming defiantly in the chill. Fountains murmuring like confessions. The manor itself was a Gothic behemoth, its facade cracked but imposing, gargoyles leering from eaves. A butler, tall, gaunt, with eyes like polished obsidian, greeted Poirot at the door. "Monsieur Poirot, welcome. The doctor awaits in the study." No pleasantries, no warmth. Poirot followed through hallways lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, their eyes seeming to track his every step. The air smelled of old books and something sharper, formaldehyde perhaps, from Voss's experiments. The study was a cavern of leather-bound volumes and peculiar artifacts. A Rorschach inkblot framed on the wall, a pendulum clock ticking hypnotically, shelves groaning under tomes on suggestion and delusion. Dr. Elias Voss rose from behind a massive oak desk, a man in his 50s with sharp features and hair slicked like a raven's wing. His smile was clinical, eyes gleaming with the fervour of a collector eyeing a rare specimen. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, extending a hand that felt cold as marble. "Your reputation precedes you, the solver of enigmas, the man who sees what others miss. I trust the journey was enlightening." Poirot inclined his head, refusing the handshake. "Enlightening? Perhaps. But I am not here for games, Doctor. Your letter speaks of a trap. Explain." Voss chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. He gestured to a decanter of brandy. "Traps are for rats, my friend. This is an experiment in the human condition. You see, I study the mind's breaking points, the psychological snares that ensnare even the sharpest intellects. You've built your career on logic, but what happens when logic falters? When doubt becomes your shadow?" Voss paced, his voice gaining intensity. "Consider the Milgram experiments or the Stanford prison study, proof that ordinary people can be led to extraordinary darkness through subtle cues. I have refined this. On this island, guests arrive, seeking clarity, but leave transformed. Some call it therapy, others a trap. You, Poirot, are my final subject. Solve my puzzle or become part of it. He slid a dossier across the desk, photographs of 5 individuals, each with a bio hinting at secrets. A banker with embezzlement rumours, a widow hiding, a fortune, twins entangled in a family curse, the young woman from the ferry clutching her locket like a lifeline, and the professor whose book concealed coded notes. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A puzzle with lives. This is no parlour game. Voss leaned in, breath minty with suppressed excitement. Exactly. The trap is psychological. Each guest harbours a fear, a lie. Yours, I suspect, is the fear of failure, the one case that eludes you. By sunset tomorrow, one will confess to a crime that binds us all. Unravel it, or watch the echoes consume you. He pressed a button, and the butler returned with a tray of tea, strong, black, with a faint herbal undertone that Poirot noted. Warily, as Voss excused himself for preparations, Poirot sipped cautiously, the warmth spreading like a subtle fog. The guests were assembling in the drawing room, he learned from the butler. Dinner at 8, revelations after. Alone, Poirot examined the dossier. The banker, Reginald Hale, had lost a fortune in a bad investment, ties to Voss's funding. The Hayes widow, Lady Beatrice Thorne, spoke in riddles about a stolen heart. The twins, Alex and Alexa Crowe, finished each other's sentences, their eyes mirroring unspoken guilt. Miss Elena Grant, the ferry passenger, trembled at shadows, her locket engraved with "Forgive me." And Professor Harlan Reed, the bookish one, scribbled furiously, as if decoding the manner itself. Poirot pocketed a photo, his mind mapping connections. Was Voss the puppet master, or a victim too? The clock struck 7, its chimes echoing unnaturally, as if the house itself conspired. He ventured to the drawing room, a grand space with crystal chandeliers and walls papered in faded damask. The guests milled about, awkward in their finery. Hale puffed a cigar, sweat beading despite the chill. Lady Thorne clutched a fan like a shield. The twins whispered in unison, a creepy harmony. Miss Grant hovered by the fire, locket glinting. Professor Reed pored over a map of the island, muttering about ley lines. Introductions were curt, eyes darting like suspects in an interrogation. "Charmed," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "Hercule Poirot, at your service." Murmurs rippled, recognition from the novels perhaps, or dread. Voss entered last, clapping for attention. "My dear guests, welcome to Echoes. Here we confront our inner mazes. Tonight share a truth, and the trap loosens, refuse, and it tightens." He dimmed the lights, shadows dancing like spectres. Dinner was a tense affair in the dining hall, silverware clinking like accusations. Voss presided at the head, probing with questions veiled as small talk. "Mr. Hale, what drives a man to risk all?" Hale blustered about ambition. "Lady Thorne, regrets are heavy burdens." She smiled sadly, fanning faster. The twins giggled at inside jokes. Miss Grant barely ate, and Reed sketched symbols on his napkin. Poirot observed, noting the herbal scent in the wine. Same as the tea. A mild sedative to lower guards. As courses cleared, Voss announced the first echo, a recorded voice from a hidden gramophone, mimicking Hale's tone. "I took what wasn't mine for the greater good." Hale paled, denying it. The room tensed, eyes accusing. Poirot interjected, "A trick of the mind, non? Voices can lie." But Voss smiled. or reveal. Your turn soon, detective. Midnight approached, the storm raging outside. Guests retired to wings of the manor, separated by locked doors. Poirot's room was opulent but eerie. A four-poster bed, mirrors reflecting infinite selves, a journal on the nightstand blank but for Voss's symbol. He lay awake, ears straining for footsteps. The trap was set, isolation breeding paranoia. What crime linked them? A shared victim, perhaps, from Voss's past experiments. Dawn's light filtered through bars. Poirot sat up, realizing the windows were fortified. A note slipped under the door. The game begins. Find the echo or lose yourself. His heart quickened, not fear, but the thrill of the hunt. Yet, as he dressed, a whisper echoed in his mind, unbidden. You will fail. Was it the house or something deeper? This chapter sets the stage, drawing you into the web of suspicion and subtle manipulations that define Voss's world. But as Poirot delves deeper, the lines between hunter and hunted blur. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where the first crack in the facade appears. Chapter 2. The Echoes. Begin. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy mist cloaking Echo's manor, casting long shadows across the polished oak floor of Poirot's room. He stood before the barred window, adjusting his tie with deliberate care, his mind already dissecting the note from under the door. Find the echo, or lose yourself. The words lingered like a challenge, sharp and personal. He tucked the note into his waistcoat and stepped into the corridor, where the air felt thick with secrets. The manor was awake, its creaks and groans blending, with distant murmurs from the other guests. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly as he descended the grand staircase, senses alert for any hint of Voss's game. The dining hall was transformed into a breakfast parlour, its long table laden with silver trays of croissants, fruit and steaming coffee. The guests were already seated, their faces taut with the strain of a sleepless night. Reginald Hale, the banker, stabbed at his eggs with unnecessary force, his jowls flushed. Lady Beatrice Thorne sipped tea, her fan replaced by a silk scarf. She twisted nervously. The twins, Alex and Alexa Crowe, sat unnaturally still, their identical gazes fixed on an empty chair. Miss Elena Grant clutched her locket, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting an intruder. Professor Harlan Reed scribbled in a leather notebook, his breakfast untouched. Dr. Elias Voss presided at the table's head, his smile as polished as the silverware. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," Voss said, his voice smooth as glass. "I trust you rested well." Poirot inclined his head, choosing a seat that allowed a view of every face. "Rest is for the innocent, Doctor. I prefer to keep my eyes open." A ripple of unease passed through the room, Fawkes pausing mid-air. Voss chuckled, gesturing to the spread. "Fuel for the mind, then. Today we explore the first echo, a truth one of you hides. Shall we begin?" Before anyone could respond, a low hum filled the room, emanating from a gramophone hidden behind a velvet curtain. The needle scratched, and a voice emerged, not Hale's this time, but a woman's, trembling yet clear. "I buried the truth, to save myself, but it follows me still." Lady Thorne gasped, her scarf slipping to the floor. "That's not me," she protested, voice cracking. "I'd never say such a thing." But her eyes betrayed her, wide with something like guilt. The twins exchanged a glance, their lips curling in unison. Miss Grant shrank into her chair, fingers white around her locket. Reed's pen stopped, his gaze sharpening. Poirot leaned forward, his moustache twitching slightly. A clever imitation, Doctor. But to what end? To provoke or to reveal? Voss spread his hands, innocent as a saint. Merely to loosen the threads, my dear detective. The mind hides what the heart confesses. One of you knows this voice's truth. Speak, or the echo grows louder. Silence fell, heavy as the mist outside. Hale coughed, muttering about theatrics. Reed resumed writing, his strokes almost angry. The twins whispered something Poirot couldn't catch, their words a private code. Voss clapped once, breaking the tension. Very well. Let us walk the grounds. Fresh air clears the mind. He led them through French doors to the manor's gardens, where dew clung to roses and gravel paths crunched underfoot. The island's cliffs loomed nearby, waves crashing. Far below. Poirot lagged behind, observing. Voss paired the guests for the walk, assigning Poirot to Miss Grant. Her steps were hesitant, her locket glinting as she glanced at him. You're the detective, she murmured. Can you stop this game? Poirot studied her pale face. Mademoiselle, games have rules. I intend to find them. Your locket, it holds a story, no? She flinched, clutching it tighter. It's private. A gift from someone gone. Her voice broke, and she hurried ahead, joining the twins. Poirot noted her evasion, filing it alongside Hale's bluster and Thorne's trembling hands. Voss led them to a stone pavilion overlooking the sea, its pillars carved with labyrinth patterns matching his seal. Here, he announced, we face the first test. Each of you will share a fear, nothing grand, just a seed of truth. Refuse, and the manor decides for you. Hale went first, grumbling. Fear? Losing my standing, I suppose. A man's nothing without his name. His eyes flickered to Voss, wary. Lady Thorne spoke next, her voice soft. I fear being forgotten, like dust swept away. The twins, in eerie unison, said, We fear losing each other. Their hands clasped tightly, almost defiant. Miss Grant whispered, I fear the past catching up. Her eyes met Poirot's briefly, pleading. Reed last adjusted his glasses. I fear chaos, minds without order. His tone was clipped, academic, but his knuckles were white. Voss nodded, satisfied. Good, the echoes hear you. Now, Monsieur Poirot? All eyes turned to him. He smiled faintly, adjusting his cufflinks. I fear nothing, Doctor, save a poorly brewed tisane. A few nervous laughs broke the tension, but Voss's gaze lingered, probing. We shall see, he said softly. The group dispersed, instructed to explore the grounds alone until lunch. Poirot chose a path toward the cliffs, his mind turning over the morning's clues. The voices, the fears, the dossiers, each a piece of Voss's puzzle. But how did they fit? He paused at the cliff's edge, the sea churning below. Footprints marred the mud, fresh and deep, leading to a narrow trail that vanished into a cave mouth. Curious, Poirot followed, his cane tapping cautiously. Inside, the air was damp, walls slick with moss. A lantern hung from a hook, its flame flickering. Beside it, a wooden box bore the labyrinth seal. He opened it, revealing a single photograph. A young woman, face obscured, holding a locket identical to Miss Grant's. A note was pinned beneath. Her truth is the key. Find it before the tide. Poirot's pulse quickened. The cave echoed with distant drips, but something else. A shuffle, a breath. He turned, cane raised, but saw only shadows. Backtracking to the manor, he resolved to question Miss Grant. But lunch brought new tension. The dining room was set for 6, not 7. "Where is Professor Reed?" Poirot asked sharply. Voss, pouring wine, shrugged. "Exploring, perhaps. The island inspires wanderlust." But Reed's notebook lay abandoned on the table, its pages torn, ink smudged with what looked like blood. The twins giggled, a chilling sound. Hale demanded explanations, his voice rising. Lady Thorne clutched her scarf, murmuring prayers. Miss Grant stared at the empty chair, her locket trembling in her hand. Poirot's grey cells sparked. Reed's absence, the photograph, the smudged ink. Was this the trap tightening? Voss raised a glass, his eyes glinting. "To truths unspoken, let us eat, and perhaps our professor will return." Lunch was silent, the food tasteless under the weight of suspicion. Poirot watched each guest, noting Hale's clenched jaw, Thorne's fidgeting, the twins' mirrored movements. Miss Grant excused herself early, claiming a headache. Poirot followed discreetly, catching her in the library, a vast room of dusty tomes and flickering candles. She stood by a shelf pulling a book, Freud's Theories of Repression. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "your locket. It matches one I found. Who gave it to you?" She spun, eyes wide. "You don't understand. It's all I have left of her, my sister. She died here, years ago." Voss promised answers, but now tears fell and she fled, leaving the book open to a page on induced amnesia. Poirot's mind raced. A sister? Dead on this island? Was Voss revisiting old crimes, or creating new ones? The library's shadows seemed to close in, the air thick, with that herbal scent again, tea, wine, now candles. As bells chimed for the afternoon session, Poirot returned to the group, Reed's absence unaddressed by Voss. The doctor announced a new echo, a locked room in the manor's east wing, where each guest would face a personal challenge. "Monsieur Poirot, you first," Voss said, handing him a key etched with the labyrinth. The door loomed ahead, heavy oak with no handle. Poirot turned the key, heart steady but mind alert. Whatever lay beyond, he would face it with logic, his shield against Voss's games. The room was dark, save for a single spotlight on a mirror. His reflection stared back, but older, wearier, with eyes that whispered doubt. A voice, his own, echoed from nowhere. "You failed them all. The cases, the lives, the truth." Poirot gripped his cane, forcing calm. This was Voss's trap, a psychological, slight. But as the door locked behind him, the mirror rippled, and the game deepened. And so, the threads of Voss's web tightened, pulling Poirot into a maze of doubt and deception. What lies beyond the locked door, and where is Professor Reed? The next chapter awaits, where shadows speak louder than truths. Chapter 3. The Mirror's Whisper. The locked door clicked shut behind Hercule Poirot, sealing him in the dimly lit room with its single spotlight and rippling mirror. The air was heavy, laced with that faint herbal scent that seemed to permeate Echo's manor. His own reflection stared back, but it was not the fastidious detective he knew. His moustache drooped, his eyes carried a weight of unseen failures. The voice, eerily his own, echoed again. You failed them all. The cases, the lives, the truth. Poirot's grip tightened on his cane, his mind a fortress against the psychological assault. Non, he murmured. This is but a trick of Dr. Voss's design. The grey cells, they do not falter. He stepped closer to the mirror, noting its antique frame etched with the same labyrinth symbol that haunted the island. The glass shimmered, almost liquid, and for a moment he saw flashes, faces of past cases, victims he'd saved, and those he hadn't. A woman's scream, a train's whistle, a glint of poison in a glass. Poirot blinked, steadying himself. This was no supernatural trick. It was technology, projection perhaps, rigged to unsettle. He tapped the mirror with his cane, expecting a hollow echo, but the surface was solid, cold. Behind it, a faint click sounded, and a panel slid open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Cautiously, Poirot descended, his footsteps muffled by damp stone. The air grew colder, the herbal scent fading into must and salt. At the bottom, a tunnel stretched forward, lit by flickering sconces. The walls were lined with charts, hand-drawn diagrams of neural pathways, scribbled notes on fear responses, and names crossed out in red ink. One caught his eye. Clara Grant, 1915, terminated. Miss Grant's sister? Poirot's heart quickened, but he pressed on, emerging into a small chamber. A table held a gramophone, its needle poised over a record, labelled Echo 3. Beside it, a letter addressed to him in Voss's elegant script. Look within, detective. The mirror lies, but the echo speaks. Poirot hesitated, then started the gramophone. A man's voice filled the chamber, low and strained. Professor Reed's. I saw what they did, the experiments, the screams. I wrote it all down. But they'll burn it. Find my book before it's gone. The record scratched to a halt. Poirot's mind raced. Reed, missing since lunch, had left a clue, or a trap. His notebook, last seen smudged with blood, was the key. But where was it now? And who were they? He retraced his steps, emerging back in the mirrored room. The door was unlocked now, leading to a side corridor. Outside, the storm had eased, leaving a heavy silence. Poirot made his way to the library, suspecting Reed's notebook might be hidden among the shelves. The room was empty, save for the faint glow of candles. He scanned the titles, psychology, hypnosis, trauma, until a book on mesmerism felt loose. Behind it, a small alcove held a leather pouch. Inside was Reed's notebook, its pages intact, but stained, the blood now dry. Entries detailed Voss's experiments. Subject CG, memory suppression via auditory cues, 1915. Subject RH, financial coercion, 1920. Initials matched the guests, Clara Grant, Reginald Hale. Was each a victim of Voss's past? A creak broke his focus. Lady Thorne stood in the doorway, her scarf clutched like a lifeline. Monsieur Poirot, you shouldn't be here, she whispered, eyes wide. It's not safe. Poirot slipped the notebook into his coat. Madame, safety is an illusion in this place. You heard the voice this morning, your voice. What truth do you bury? Her lips trembled. I lost someone dear. Voss promised closure, but his price is too high. She fled before he could press further, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Poirot returned to the main hall, where Voss had gathered the others for the afternoon session. The twins sat cross-legged on a rug, their eyes following him like hawks. Hale paced, muttering about stocks. Miss Grant was absent, her chair empty. Voss stood by a fireplace, its flames casting shadows that danced like spectres. "Monsieur, Poirot, you survived the mirror," he said, his tone mocking. "Did it show you anything enlightening?" Poirot smiled thinly. "It showed me a man who plays with shadows, Doctor. Where is Mademoiselle Grant?" Voss's smile didn't waver. "Resting. The echoes can be overwhelming." He clapped, summoning the butler, who carried a tray of sealed envelopes. "Each of you receives a task," Voss announced. "Complete it before dinner, or the trap tightens." Poirot's envelope contained a single line: "Find the second echo in the west wing." The others clutched their envelopes, faces pale. The twins whispered. Hale swore under his breath, and Lady Thorne tore hers open, then gasped, crumpling it. Poirot excused himself, heading for the west wing. The corridors were a maze, portraits glaring down with accusing eyes. He passed locked doors, their keyholes scratched as if forced. At the end of a hall, a door stood ajar, leading to a conservatory. Glass walls framed a jungle of exotic plants, their leaves glistening with moisture. A gramophone sat on a wrought iron table, another record spinning. This time, the voice was a child's, distorted but clear. "We didn't mean to hurt her. It was an accident." "The twins?" Poirot stopped the record, noting a smudged fingerprint on its edge, fresh, unlike Reed's blood. Footsteps approached. Alex Crowe appeared, alone, his face pale. "You heard it," he said, not a question. "It's not what you think, monsieur. Alexa and I, we were children. We didn't know." His voice cracked, and he backed away, vanishing into the greenery. Poirot followed but found only a broken orchid, its petals crushed. A clue, or another distraction. He pocketed a petal, its scent sharp, unlike the herbal haze. Dinner was announced by a gong, its reverberations unsettling. The dining hall was colder now, the chandelier dimmed. Miss Grant had returned, her eyes red-rimmed, locket still clutched. Hale drank heavily, his hands unsteady. Lady Thorne sat rigid, her scarf knotted tightly. The twins were inseparable, their whispers a constant hum. Voss raised a glass. "To progress. The echoes grow clearer, do they not?" No one answered. Reed's chair remained empty, his absence a silent scream. As servants cleared plates, Poirot caught Miss Grant slipping. A note to Hale, who pocketed it quickly. A conspiracy or fear-driven alliance? Voss leaned toward Poirot. "The West Wing was fruitful, I trust. The second echo always stings." Poirot met his gaze. "It stings less than betrayal, Doctor. Your game risks lives." Voss laughed softly. "Risk is the crucible of truth." After dinner, the guests were sent to their rooms, locked in for the night. Poirot examined Reed's notebook again, finding a new entry. Voss's machine, basement, controls the echoes. A machine? He recalled the tunnel's charts. Neural manipulation, perhaps through sound or drugs. The herbal scent, sedative or trigger. He checked his window. The bars were unyielding. A scratching came from the wall, faint but rhythmic, like Morse code. He tapped back, but it stopped. Sleep eluded him, his mind weaving connections. Clara Grant's death, Reed's warning, the twins' confession, Hale's greed, Thorne's loss. All threads in Voss's tapestry. The child's voice haunted him. its innocence a stark contrast to the manor's menace. Was the crime old or unfolding now? As dawn approached, a scream pierced the silence, sharp and female. Poirot sprang up, but his door was locked. The trap was tightening, and someone had fallen. The scream lingers, a jagged edge in the manor's silence. Who cried? Out! And what does Voss's machine conceal? The next chapter beckons, where Poirot faces the heart of the trap. Chapter 4. The Scream in the Dark. The scream lingered in the air, sharp and raw, as Hercule Poirot stood by his locked door, his heart steady but his mind racing. The manor's walls seemed to swallow the sound, leaving only an oppressive silence. He pressed his ear to the oak, listening for footsteps or cries, but heard nothing save the distant howl of the wind against the cliffs. His fingers traced the lock, solid, unyielding. Voss's game was escalating, and the scream, unmistakably female, suggested a new move on the board. Was it Miss Grant, Lady Thorne, or one of the twins? Poirot's grey cells churned, piecing together the night's clues: Reed's missing notebook, the child's voice, the cryptic machine in the basement. He turned to his room, searching for a way out. The barred window offered no escape, but the scratching he'd heard earlier suggested a hidden passage. Poirot tapped the walls, his cane probing for hollows. A panel near the fireplace gave slightly, revealing a narrow chute. Servants' access, perhaps, from the manor's asylum days. With effort, he pried it open, dust clouding the air. The chute was tight, but Poirot, ever precise, manoeuvred through, emerging in a service corridor, lit by a single flickering bulb. The scream had come from the east wing, he judged, and he moved swiftly, his polished shoes silent on the worn stone. The corridor led to a spiral staircase, its iron rungs cold under his grip. At the top, he found a hallway lined with numbered doors, guest rooms, each locked. The scream's echo guided him to door 7, Miss Grant's. He knocked softly, calling her name. No answer. The lock was simpler here, and with a hairpin from his pocket, a trick learned from a Paris case, he jimmied it open. The room was in disarray, bed unmade, locket on the floor, its clasp broken. A window stood ajar, letting in the damp sea air. Poirot knelt, examining the locket. Inside, a faded photograph of 2 girls, one resembling Miss Grant, the other younger, Clara, her sister. A smear of blood marked the frame, fresh and wet. Footsteps echoed behind him. He spun, cane raised, to find Alexa Crowe, her face pale, eyes wide. "Monsieur Poirot, I heard it too," she whispered, her twin nowhere in sight. "Eleanor, Miss Grant. She was crying earlier about her sister." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And where is your brother, mademoiselle? You are rarely apart." Alexa's lips trembled. "Alex. He's looking for something. Voss gave us a task, to find a key. We split up." Her voice faltered, and she clutched a small charm, identical to her brother's. Poirot noted it, his mind flagging their separation as suspicious. He ushered Alexa out, locking the door behind them. "We must find Mademoiselle Grant. Show me where you last saw her." Alexa led him to the East Wing's atrium, a glass-domed space filled with wilted ferns and a dry fountain. A trail of blood drops, faint but fresh, led to a side door. Poirot followed, emerging onto a balcony overlooking the churning sea. There, slumped against the railing, was Miss Grant, her dress torn, a shallow cut on her arm. She was conscious but dazed, her eyes unfocused. "Elena," Poirot said gently, kneeling beside her. "Who did this?" She shook her head, voice barely a whisper. I saw her. Clara, in the fog. She called me. Then someone pushed." Poirot examined the cut. Superficial, meant to frighten, not kill. He helped her up, wrapping his handkerchief around her arm. Alexa hovered, her concern seeming genuine. "We must return her to safety," Poirot said, guiding them back inside. But as they reached the atrium, Dr. Voss appeared, his coat immaculate despite the hour. "Monsieur Poirot, always the rescuer," he said, his tone laced with amusement. "Miss Grant, you wandered too far. The echoes are restless tonight." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Restless or provoked, Doctor? Someone attacked her." Voss raised an eyebrow, unperturbed. "The island tests us all. Come, breakfast awaits." He led them to the dining hall, where Hale and Lady Thorne sat, their faces drawn. Alex Crowe was there, his charm glinting as he avoided his sister's gaze. No sign of Reed. The table was set with pastries and coffee, but the air was thick with suspicion. Poirot sat Miss Grant beside him, noting her trembling hands. "Mademoiselle, your locket, Clara's image. She died here, you said. When?" Elena's voice was faint. 10 years ago. Voss's therapy. It broke her. I came to find out why." Hale snorted, breaking the tension. "Therapy? This place is a madhouse." Lady Thorne shushed him, her scarf knotted tightly. Voss clapped. "For attention. Enough. Today's task. Each of you will visit the archive room. Find a record of your truth, or someone else's." He handed out keys, each etched with a guest's initials. Poirot's key bore his own HP. He pocketed it, his mind on the basement. Machine Reed's notebook mentioned. Was it the source of the voices, the attacks? The archive room was in the manor's underbelly, reached by a creaking lift. Poirot went alone, his key unlocking a heavy iron door. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls, labelled by year and name. He found a drawer marked 1915 and pulled out a file on Clara Grant. It detailed her treatment, auditory hypnosis, exposure to recorded fears, ending in patient collapse. A signature, Voss's, confirmed her death as accidental. Poirot's jaw tightened. Negligence or murder? Another file caught his eye. Crowe, A&A, 1915. Children then, subjects in Voss's early experiments. Their accident from the gramophone, was it tied to Clara? A noise interrupted, a shuffle from the shadows. Poirot turned, but no one was there. He slipped the files into his coat, exiting as the lift groaned. Upstairs, the guests gathered. For lunch, Miss Grant now bandaged, but silent. Alex and Alexa sat apart, their usual unity fractured. Hale complained about his archive task, claiming he found nothing but old ledgers. Lady Thorne clutched a folded paper, her eyes distant. Voss watched them all, his smile a mask. Progress, my friends. The echoes draw closer to the surface. Poirot leaned toward Miss Grant. "Mademoiselle, did Clara speak of the twins?" She nodded faintly. "They were here, children in the asylum. They played with her before she broke." Her voice cracked, and Poirot patted her hand, his mind racing. The twins' charm, the child's voice, Clara's death, links in a chain. But where was Reed, and what did his notebook's blood signify? As lunch ended, Voss announced a group session in the chapel, A stone building behind the manor, its stained glass windows depicted labyrinths, casting eerie patterns. The guests sat in pews, Voss at a pulpit like a dark preacher. "Tonight we share a secret," he said. "One truth to free you." Hale scoffed, but his hands shook. "Lady," Thorne murmured about a lost love. The twins spoke in unison. "We share everything." Miss Grant said nothing, her eyes on her locket's empty clasp. Poirot stood, his voice calm but firm. "Doctor, your secrets are built on pain. Clara Grant's file, I have it. Her death was no accident." Gasps rippled through the chapel. Voss's smile faltered, then returned. "Bold, Monsieur Poirot. But files lie as mirrors do. The chapel holds its own echo. Listen." He pressed a hidden switch and a gramophone hummed, this time with Poirot's voice. "I failed her. I fail them all." The guests stared, doubt creeping into their eyes. Poirot's heart thudded, but he forced a smile. "A clever forgery, Doctor, but truth cuts deeper than echoes." Voss clapped slowly. "We shall see. Sleep well, my friends. The trap awaits." Back in his room, Poirot found a new note under his door. "The machine hums below. Stop it, or she falls next. She, Miss Grant?" He checked his watch. Midnight. The manor slept, but the basement called. Another scream would come, he knew, unless he unravelled Voss's machine. The chapel's echo lingers, and the basement's secrets beckon. Can Poirot stop the machine before another falls? The next chapter looms, where the trap's heart beats louder. Chapter 5. The machine below Hercule Poirot stood in his room, the note's warning burning in his mind. The machine hums below. Stop it, or she falls next. The manor was silent, save for the faint creak of settling beams, but the threat felt alive, coiled in the shadows. His watch read midnight, its ticking a steady counterpoint to his racing thoughts. Miss Grant was the likely target, her connection to Clara's death a raw nerve in Voss's game. The basement, mentioned in Reed's notebook, held the key, a Hercule machine, perhaps the source of the voices and psychological traps. Poirot adjusted his waistcoat, slipped the stolen files into a hidden pocket, and set out, his cane a quiet tap in the dark. The service corridor from the previous night was his path again, its narrow chute a test of agility for the meticulous detective. He emerged into the same dim hallway, but now a faint hum vibrated through the walls, mechanical and ominous. Following it, he descended a rusted staircase deeper than the archive's level, where the air grew damp and metallic. The hum grew, louder, leading to a steel door marked with the labyrinth symbol. No lock, but a keypad glowed faintly, demanding a code. Poirot recalled Reed's notebook. A scribbled number, 1915, Clara's year. He entered it, and the door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. The machine dominated the space, a hulking mass of wires, dials, and glass tubes pulsing with faint light. Gramophones lined its edges, each connected to speakers embedded in the walls. A control panel blinked with switches labelled fear induction, memory trigger, and vocal mimicry. Poirot's grey cells sparked. This was Voss's tool, a device to manipulate minds through sound and suggestion. Charts on a nearby table mapped brainwaves, with names: Grant, Hale, Crow, Thorne. His own name was there too, with a note: resistant, increased dosage. The herbal scent in the tea, wine and candles, a chemical to weaken defences. He examined a gramophone, its record etched with subject e.g. Elena Grant. Playing it, he heard Clara's voice, soft and pleading. "Elena, you left me." Poirot stopped it, his jaw tight. The machine fabricated voices, weaving guilt into reality. He searched for a kill switch, but a shadow moved behind him. Spinning, he saw Reginald Hale, his face slick with sweat, a wrench in hand. "You shouldn't be here, Poirot," Hale growled. "This thing, it's his power. He'll ruin me if I don't obey." Poirot raised his cane. "And ruin others, monsieur? What hold does Voss have over you?" Hale's eyes darted. "Debts. He funded my bank after a bad deal, but now he wants my silence. About Clara, about the others." He lunged, but Poirot sidestepped, his agility belying his age. The wrench clattered to the floor. "Enough!" Poirot snapped. "Help me stop this, or you're as guilty as he." Hale slumped, defeated. "It's not just the machine. There's a log. Every experiment, every death. Voss keeps it in his study." Poirot nodded, binding Hale's wrists with a cord from the machine. "Stay here, monsieur. The truth will free you, or condemn you." Leaving Hale, Poirot ascended to the main floor, aiming for Voss's study. The manor was a labyrinth at night, its corridors twisting like the doctor's mind. He passed the chapel, its stained glass labyrinths glinting under moonlight. A faint sob came from within. Peering inside, he saw Lady Thorne kneeling at the altar, clutching a rosary. "Madam," Poirot whispered, "why do you weep?" She, startled, her scarf slipping. "My son," she murmured. "Voss promised to cure him years ago, but he died here, like Clara. I came to confront him, but now I'm trapped." Her words echoed Miss Grant's, another victim of Voss's experiments. Poirot helped her up, urging her to return to her room. "Courage, madame. The trap is weakening." He continued to the study, its door unlocked. A trap or carelessness? Inside, the desk was cluttered with papers, but a locked drawer bore the labyrinth seal. Using his hairpin trick, Poirot opened it, finding a leather-bound logbook. Pages listed experiments: Clara Grant, memory suppression, fatal overdose; Thomas Thorne, Lady Thorne's son, auditory overload, cardiac arrest; Crow twins, childhood conditioning, partial success. Each entry was cold, clinical, Voss's signature. At the bottom, Poirot's blood chilled. Years of manipulation disguised as therapy. A creak sounded behind him. Alex Crowe stood in the doorway, his charm glinting. "You found it," he said, voice flat. "Alexa warned me you dig too deep." Poirot closed the logbook, his tone calm. "And what did you and your sister do, monsieur, in 1915? The child's voice. An accident, you said." Alex's face twisted. "We were kids, playing with Voss's toys. Clara got hurt. We didn't mean it." His hand slipped into his pocket, but Poirot was faster, his cane tapping Alex's wrist, sharply. "No weapons, monsieur. Tell me where Professor Reed is." Alex hesitated, then sagged. "The cliffs." He found the logbook first, tried to run. Voss stopped him. Poirot's heart sank. Reed, likely dead. He escorted Alex to the dining hall, where dawn was breaking, its grey light filtering through the windows. The others were assembling, summoned by a bell. Miss Grant looked fragile, her arm bandaged. Lady Thorne clutched her rosary. Hale was absent, still in the basement. Voss entered, his smile unshaken. Monsieur Poirot, an early riser, have you enjoyed my archive? Poirot held up the logbook. Your crimes, Doctor, are no longer shadows. Gasps rippled through the room. Voss's eyes narrowed, but he laughed. Crimes? Merely science. The mind must break to mend. He clapped, and the butler appeared, holding a syringe. A precaution for uncooperative guests. Poirot stepped forward, voice steady. Your machine is exposed, Voss, and Hale will testify. The butler hesitated, syringe wavering. Miss Grant stood, her voice shaking but firm. For Clara, stop this. Voss's smile faded. Very well. The final echo begins at noon. Meet in the tower. Bring your truths, or lose them. He swept out, the butler following. The guests stared at Poirot, fear and hope mingling. He turned to Miss Grant. Mademoiselle, stay close. The tower is his endgame. She nodded, clutching her broken locket. As they dispersed, Poirot hid the logbook under a loose floorboard. The tower loomed in his mind, a final stage for Voss's trap. Reed's fate, the twins' guilt, Thorne's loss, Hale's complicity, all converged there. The hum of the machine still echoed in his ears, a reminder of the stakes. Another scream might come, but Poirot was ready to cut the strings. The tower awaits, where Voss's final echo will sound. Can Poirot dismantle the trap before it claims another? The next chapter calls, Where Truths Collide. Chapter 6. The tower's gambit Hercule Poirot stood in the dining hall, the weight of the hidden logbook pressing against his thoughts as the morning light cast long shadows across the room. The guests dispersed, their faces etched with dread, knowing the noon summons to the tower loomed like a guillotine. Miss Eleanor Grant lingered, her bandaged arm trembling slightly as she clutched the broken locket. Poirot met her gaze, his voice low. Mademoiselle, courage. We go to the tower together, but first, I must ensure our evidence is secure. She nodded, her eyes reflecting a flicker of trust amidst her fear. He retrieved the logbook from its hiding place under the floorboard, its pages a damning record of Voss's experiments. Slipping it into his coat, Poirot led Miss Grant through the manor's winding halls toward the tower, a spiralling structure at the estate's northern end. The air grew colder as they approached, the walls lined with faded tapestries depicting scenes of confinement, patients in straitjackets, eyes hollow with despair. The tower door was iron, its surface etched with the labyrinth symbol, now a grim signature of Voss's control. Poirot's key, marked HP, turned smoothly, but the door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling upward into gloom. As they climbed, Miss Grant whispered, Clara loved towers. She said they made her feel free, even here. Her voice broke, and Poirot patted her hand. Her memory guides us, mademoiselle. We will end this for her. The stairs opened into a circular chamber, its walls lined with mirrors reflecting distorted images of the sea beyond. A gramophone stood at the centre, its needle poised over a record labelled Final Echo. Dr. Voss waited beside it, his black coat blending with the shadows. The other guests were already there. Lady Thorne, her rosary beads clicking. The twins, Alex and Alexa, standing unnaturally still. And Reginald Hale, freed from the basement, his face a mask of shame. Voss clapped, the sound sharp in the confined space. Welcome, my friends, to the heart of the trap. Here, the echoes become truth. His eyes locked on Poirot. You've been busy, detective. My logbook, perhaps. Poirot's mustache twitched. A scientist keeps records, Doctor. Yours betray you. Voss laughed, unfazed. Betrayal is a perspective. Let us play the final echo and see who breaks. He started the gramophone, and a chorus of voices filled the room. Clara's, Reed's, a child's, Poirot's own, all woven into a cacophony of accusations. You failed. You hid. You killed. Lady Thorne gasped, dropping her rosary. The twins gripped each other's hands, their faces pale. Hale muttered curses, sweat beading on his brow. Miss Grant swayed, and Poirot steadied her, his voice cutting through the din. Enough, Voss. Your machine weaves lies, but I have proof. Clara's death, your experiments, the blood on your hands. He produced the logbook, holding it aloft. Voss's smile tightened. Proof is fragile, monsieur. Mirrors break, and so do minds. Before Poirot could respond, the mirrors shifted, sliding to reveal hidden panels. Behind one, a projector hummed, casting images onto the walls. Grainy footage of a young Clara Grant, strapped to a chair, her screams muted but haunting. Miss Grant cried out, lunging toward the image, but Poirot held her back. It is a memory, mademoiselle, not reality. The footage changed, showing a young Alex and Alexa, giggling as they turned dials on a machine, Clara writhing in the background. The twins froze, their charm necklaces glinting. We were children, Alexa whispered. Voss made us think it was a game. Voss stepped forward, his voice silky. Innocence is no excuse. Each of you carries a guilt. Hale's greed, Thorne's denial, the twins' cruelty, Elena's abandonment, and you, Poirot, your pride. He pressed a button, and the gramophone's voices grew louder, now chanting Poirot's name. Failure. Failure. Poirot's jaw clenched, but he forced clarity. Your machine amplifies fear, Doctor, but it cannot rewrite truth. Where is Professor Reed? Voss gestured to a trapdoor in the floor. Below, perhaps, or lost to the cliffs. He sought to expose me, like you. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Poirot peered down, smelling salt and decay. Monsieur Hale, he said sharply, you spoke of a log. Is this where Reed fell? Hale nodded, eyes downcast. I saw him. Voss pushed him, said he was a liability. The twins gasped, and Lady Thorne crossed herself. Poirot turned to Voss. Your game ends here. Release us, or the logbook reaches Scotland Yard. Voss's eyes gleamed. Bold, but naive. The island is mine, and so are you. He snapped his fingers, and the butler appeared, syringe in hand. But Miss Grant moved, first grabbing a mirror shard from the floor and holding it to Voss's throat. No more, she hissed. For Clara. The butler froze, uncertain. Poirot seized the moment, snatching the syringe and tossing it down the trapdoor. The room tensed, mirrors reflecting every trembling face. Voss laughed, a brittle sound. You think a shard stops me? The machine runs deeper than this tower. He lunged for the gramophone, but Poirot was faster, smashing it with his cane. The voices stopped, leaving a ringing silence. The guests stared, shaken but emboldened. To the basement, Poirot commanded. We destroy the machine now. They descended the tower, Voss in tow, his hands bound with Hale's belt. The basement chamber was as Poirot left it, the machine humming louder, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Lady Thorne clutched her rosary, whispering prayers. The twins hovered near the exit, their unity restored but fragile. Miss Grant stared at the machine, her shard still in hand. Hale pointed to a red lever. "That's the shut-off. Reed showed me before Voss got him." Poirot approached the lever, but a new sound stopped him. A groan from a shadowed corner. Professor Reed lay there, bound and gagged, his face bruised but alive. "Mon Dieu," Poirot muttered, freeing him. Reed coughed, voice hoarse. "The machine, it's wired to the manor. Destroy it, and the trap's end." Poirot nodded, pulling the lever. Sparks flew, the machine's hum dying with a screech. The lights dimmed, and the air cleared of its herbal haze. Voss struggled, his composure cracking. "You've ruined years of work. The mine's secrets were mine." Poirot faced him, calm but unyielding. "Secrets built on suffering are no science, Doctor. You are finished." The guests stood together, their fears fading in the machine's silence. Reed clutched his notebook, its pages now a weapon. Miss Grant dropped her shard, tears falling. "For Clara," she whispered. As they escorted Voss to the main hall, the storm outside broke, sunlight piercing the mist. The manor felt lighter, its echoes stilled. But one question lingered: how to leave the island? The ferry was due at dusk, but Voss's control ran deep. Poirot's mind turned to the docks, the final piece of the puzzle. The machine is silent, but the island's grip remains. Can Poirot lead them to freedom, or does Voss have one last trap? The next chapter awaits, where the final truth unfolds. Chapter 7. The Path to the Docks. The air in Echo's manor felt lighter with the machine silenced, but Hercule Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the main hall, where the guests stood in a tense cluster around the bound Dr. Voss. The doctor's face was a mask of defiance, his earlier charisma replaced by a cold glare. Miss Elena Grant clutched her broken locket, her tears dry but her resolve firm. Professor Reed, bruised but steady, gripped his notebook like a lifeline. Lady Thorne's rosary beads clicked softly, a rhythm of lingering fear. The twins, Alex and Alexa Crowe, stood close, their charm necklaces glinting as they exchanged wary glances. Reginald Hale, his hand still marked by the cord from the basement, avoided eye contact, shame heavy on his shoulders. Poirot's mind hummed. The machine was dead, but the island itself remained a trap, and the ferry at dusk was their only escape. "Monsieur Reed," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the silence. "You mentioned the docks. The ferry. Does it come without Voss's command?" Reed coughed, rubbing his wrists. "It's automated, set for dusk, but Voss controls the signal tower. Without his code, the ferry won't dock." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Then we find the tower and the code." Voss laughed, a hollow sound. "You think it's that simple, detective? The island keeps its secrets." Poirot ignored him, addressing the group. "We move together. No one strays. The docks are our goal." The group set out, Poirot leading with his cane tapping a steady rhythm. The manor's front doors groaned, open, revealing the cliffside path to the docks. The mist had lifted, but the sea churned below, waves crashing against jagged rocks. The path was narrow, flanked by thorny shrubs and loose gravel. Poirot noted fresh footprints, boots, not the butler's polished shoes. Someone else was on the move. "Stay close," he warned, his eyes scanning the cliffs. Miss Grant walked. Beside him, her voice low. "Clara tried to reach the docks once. She never made it. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. Clara's fate was a shadow over them all. Halfway down the path, a stone archway loomed, its keystone carved with the labyrinth symbol. Beneath it, a metal box was bolted to the rock, a keypad glowing faintly. "The signal tower's control," Reed said, limping forward. "Voss's code, 4 digits, always changing." Poirot studied the keypad, recalling the logbook's dates. 1915 worked in the basement. Let us try another. He entered 1920, Hale's year of debt to Voss. The box clicked, but a red light flashed. "Incorrect," Poirot muttered. Voss smirked, still bound. "You'll never guess it. The island decides who leaves." Lady Thorne stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Try 1917, my son. That was his year." Poirot entered the digits, and the box hummed, a green light flickering. A panel slid open, revealing a lever and a small screen displaying signal active. Poirot pulled the lever, and a distant horn sounded from the sea. The ferry was coming. Voss's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. "Clever," he hissed, "but the tower holds more than signals." The path descended steeply now, the docks visible below, a wooden pier jutting into the churning water, a small signal tower at its end. As they neared, a figure emerged from the shrubs. The butler, his obsidian eyes glinting, a pistol in hand. "Far enough," he said, voice flat. "The doctor's orders stand." Poirot raised his cane, calm but alert. "Monsieur, your loyalty is to a sinking ship. Step aside or face justice." The butler hesitated, glancing at Voss, whose bound hands twitched. Miss Grant spoke, her voice steady. "You knew my sister. You carried her to that machine. Don't let him control you too." The butler's grip wavered, and Poirot seized the moment, stepping forward. "Your weapon, monsieur, is no match for truth. Lower it." The butler's shoulders sagged, and he dropped the pistol, kicking it into the sea. "I'm done," he muttered, stepping back. Poirot nodded, signalling the group to move. The tower was a rusted shack, its door ajar. Inside, a radio crackled, and a logbook, not Voss's, listed ferry schedules. Poirot flipped through it, finding a note. "Emergency signal, 99999. He entered it into the tower's console, and the horn blared again, closer now. But as they turned to leave, the twins froze, their eyes fixed on the path behind. A shadow moved, fast, cloaked, holding a blade that caught the fading light. "Run!" Poirot shouted, pushing Miss Grant toward the pier. The group scattered, Hale stumbling, Lady Thorne clutching Reed. The figure lunged at Poirot, but he parried with his cane, the blade grazing his sleeve. The attacker fled into the shrubs, face unseen. Voss laughed, still bound. "The island fights back, Poirot." Ignoring him, Poirot rallied the group to the pier, where the ferry's lights were now visible, cutting through the dusk. On the pier, Poirot checked Miss Grant's arm. No new wounds. Reed clutched his notebook, muttering about evidence. Hercule panted, his face ashen. The twins whispered, their unity shaken. Lady Thorne prayed softly, her rosary a lifeline. Poirot scanned the cliffs, expecting another attack, but the shrubs were still. "The figure, Voss's ally?" he asked Reed. The professor shook his head. "Maybe a guard. Voss hired men to keep the island secure." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A hired blade, or another guest with a secret. The ferry docked, its crew silent. Faces shadowed under caps. Poirot escorted Voss aboard, ensuring he was secured in a cabin. The guests followed, their relief palpable but fragile. Miss Grant clutched Poirot's arm. "Is it over?" she asked. He patted her hand. "Not yet, mademoiselle. The truth is aboard with us." As the ferry pulled away, Poirot noticed a final detail. A small boat, hidden in a cove, rocking empty in the waves. Someone had planned an escape or an ambush. The ferry's engine roared, carrying them toward the mainland, but Poirot's mind was on the cloaked figure. Was it the butler, reneging on his surrender? Or another player in Voss's game? He gathered the guests in the ferry's lounge, their faces lit by dim lanterns. "Mes amis," he said, "we are not free until every secret is laid bare. Who among you saw the attacker?" Silence met him, eyes darting. Hale coughed. "I saw nothing, just shadows." The twins nodded in unison. Lady Thorne murmured, "The island's curse." Miss Grant said nothing, her locket empty. Poirot paced, his grey cells weaving connections. The logbook reads survival, the twins' childhood guilt, Thorne's loss, Hale's debts, Clara's death, all pointed to Voss. But the blade suggested another hand. As the mainland's lights appeared, Poirot resolved to confront the final echo on the ferry before justice slipped away. The ferry sails, but danger lingers. Who wields the blade, and what final truth hides among the guests? The next chapter approaches, where Poirot faces the last echo. Chapter 8. The Ferry's Confession. The ferry's engines thrummed beneath Hercule Poirot's feet as he stood in the cramped lounge, the mainland's lights a faint promise on the horizon. The guests sat in a tense semicircle, their faces pale, under the flickering lanterns. Dr. Elias Voss, bound and seated under Poirot's watchful eye, wore a smirk that belied his captivity. Miss Helena Grant clutched her broken locket, her eyes haunted but resolute. Professor Reed, still bruised, pored over his notebook, its pages a lifeline to truth. Lady Beatrice Thorne's rosary beads clicked softly, her lips moving in silent prayer. The twins, Alex and Alexa Crowe, sat apart for once, their charm necklaces dull in the dim light. Reginald Hale slouched, his hands fidgeting, guilt etched in every line of his face. The cloaked figure's attack on the pier lingered in Poirot's mind, a final piece of Voss's trap, still unresolved. Poirot paced, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. "Mes amis," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "We sail toward freedom, but the island's shadow follows us. A blade flashed on the pier, wielded by someone among us, or for us. Speak now, or the truth will cut deeper." Silence hung heavy, broken only by the creak of the ferry's hull. Hale cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "I told you, Poirot, I saw nothing, just shadows in the fog." The twins nodded in sync, their eyes avoiding his. Lady Thorne whispered, "It's the island's curse, punishing us." Miss Grant shook her head, her voice barely audible. "It wasn't a curse. Someone wanted us trapped." Poirot's gaze settled on Voss, whose smirk widened. "Doctor, your games unravel. The machine is dead, your logbook exposed. Yet you smile. Why?" Voss leaned back, his bound hands relaxed. "Because, Monsieur Poirot, the trap is not the island. It's you. Your need to solve, to triumph, blinds you to the obvious." Poirot's moustache twitched, but he pressed on. "The obvious, Doctor? A hired thug, perhaps, to silence us? Or one of these guests still under your spell? Before Voss could answer, a crewman entered, his cap low, face shadowed. "Mainland in 30 minutes. Stay seated." His voice was gruff, but Poirot noted a tremor, a glance toward Voss. Suspicious, he followed the crewman to the deck, signalling Reed to watch Voss. The sea air was sharp, the horizon now clear. The crewman stood by the rail, adjusting a signal lamp. "Monsieur," Poirot said, approaching, "you know Dr. Voss. What is your role in his game?" The man stiffened, then turned, revealing a scar across his cheek. The cab driver from Southampton, the one who'd warned Poirot about the island. "You," Poirot said, his grey cells sparking. "You ferried me to the docks, and now here. Are you Voss's pawn?" The man's eyes darted, then softened. "Not by choice. Name's Carter. Voss paid me to drive, to watch. Said it was for science. But I saw things. People leaving the island broken. I tried to warn you." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The cloaked figure. "Was it you?" Carter shook his head. "No. I was at the tower, signalling the ferry. Someone else was out there." Poirot returned to the lounge, his thoughts on the small boat he'd seen in the cove. A second escape. Route or a trap? He gathered the guests, his voice firm. "The attacker remains among us. Monsieur Hale, your debts tied you to Voss. Did you wield the blade to protect your secrets?" Hale flushed, fists clenching. "I'm no killer. I owed him, yes, but I didn't attack anyone." Poirot turned to the twins. "And you, Mademoiselle, your childhood accident with Clara. Did you strike again to silence Miss Grant?" Alexa's eyes welled up. "No, we were kids then. We've carried that guilt forever." Alex nodded, his voice low. "We ran from the pier to hide, not to hurt." Lady Thorne spoke next, unprompted. "It wasn't me, monsieur. My son's death broke me, but I'd never harm another." Her sincerity rang true, but Poirot's gaze lingered on Miss Grant. "Mademoiselle, you were attacked, yet you hold back. Your locket, Clara's memory. What else do you know?" Eleanor's fingers tightened on the broken clasp. "I saw a shadow, like Clara's, but it wasn't her. It was someone watching. Always watching," her voice cracked, and Poirot saw fear, not deception. Voss chuckled, breaking the tension. "You chase ghosts, Poirot. The blade was a distraction, my final echo to keep you guessing." Poirot spun on him. "No, Doctor, your echoes are lies, but the blade was real, and I will find its owner." He moved to the cabin where Voss was secured, searching his coat. Inside a pocket, he found a folded note. "Carter, ensure the ferry delays. One must stay behind." Poirot's blood chilled. A delay meant time for the attacker to strike again. He confronted Carter on the deck. Voss ordered a delay. Why? Carter paled, glancing at the lounge. He said one guest had to stay, didn't say who. I ignored it, signalled on time. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Then we watched closely. Back in the lounge, he gathered the guests, Voss now silent but watchful. "Mes amis, the mainland. Nears, but danger sails with us. Check your possessions. Anything out of place." Reed patted his notebook. Intact. Lady Thorne held her rosary. The twins touched their charms, identical but worn. Miss Grant gasped, reaching into her pocket. "My sister's photo. It's gone." Poirot's mind raced. The locket's photo, stolen during the attack. He scanned the room, noticing Alex's charm was slightly askew, its clasp loose. "Monsieur Crowe," he said sharply, "your necklace. May I see it?" Alex hesitated, then unhooked it. Inside the charm, a tiny photo, Clara Grant smiling, young. Alexa gasped. "Alex, you took it!" He shook his head, frantic. "I found it on the pier after the attack. I thought it was a clue." Poirot held the photo, its edges worn. "This was no clue, monsieur. It was bait to fracture your trust." He turned to Voss. "You planted it, Doctor, to sow chaos." Voss shrugged, unrepentant. "Chaos reveals character, Poirot." But Poirot's focus shifted to the crewman's signal lamp, now flashing erratically. He rushed to the deck, finding Carter slumped, a knife in his shoulder, the lamp smashed. "The attacker!" Carter gasped. "Went below!" Poirot rallied the guests, locking Voss in the cabin. "To the lower deck," he ordered. The stairs were steep, the air damp with engine oil. At the bottom, a cloaked figure stood, blade glinting. The hood fell, revealing the butler, his obsidian eyes wild. "Voss promised me freedom," he snarled. "You ruined it." Poirot raised his cane. "Your freedom lies in truth, monsieur. Drop the blade." The butler lunged, but Reed tackled him, the knife skittering across the deck. The guests restrained him, Hale's strength finally useful. As the ferry docked, police lights flashed. On the mainland. Poirot handed over Voss, the butler, and the logbook, his voice steady. "Justice, mes amis, begins here." But one question lingered. Who had Carter signalled before the attack? The mainland beckons, but a final echo whispers. Has Poirot truly unravelled the trap, or does one secret remain? The next chapter looms, where the last thread is pulled. Chapter 9. The Last Echo. The ferry rocked gently as it docked at Southampton, the mainland's lights cutting through the early evening haze. Hercule Poirot stood on the deck, his cane steady despite the sea's sway, his eyes fixed on the police, vans waiting ashore. Dr. Elias Voss, bound and silent, was flanked by officers, his smirk replaced by a grim line. The butler, now handcuffed, glared with defiance, his betrayal exposed. Miss Elena Grant clung to her broken locket, her face a mix of relief and sorrow. Professor Reed clutched his notebook, its pages a testament to Voss's crimes. Lady Beatrice Thorne murmured prayers, her rosary a constant rhythm. The twins, Alex and Alexa Crowe, stood close, their charm necklaces glinting faintly, their unity restored but shaken. Reginald Hale, his shame heavy, avoided their gazes. Yet Poirot's mind lingered on Carter's erratic signal lamp and the question of who it was meant for, a final echo still unresolved. As the gangplank lowered, Poirot gathered the guests in the lounge one last time. "Mes amis," he said, his voice calm but piercing. "We have escaped the island, but the trap's shadow lingers. The signal lamp was tampered with, a message sent before Carter was attacked. One of you knows why." Silence fell, thick with suspicion. Hale shifted uncomfortably, his hands twitching. "I was with you, Poirot. I saw nothing." The twins spoke in unison. "We were running from the blade." Lady Thorne shook her head, her rosary clicking. "I prayed for deliverance, nothing more." Miss Grant's eyes widened. "The lamp. I saw it flash when we boarded. 3 short, 1 long." Poirot's grey cells sparked. Morse code, perhaps? 3 short, 1 long. The letter K. A signal to someone waiting, or a warning? He turned to Reed, whose bruised face was taut with focus. "Monsieur, your notebook. Any mention of a K in Voss's experiments?" Reed flipped through pages, his voice hoarse. "Here. Catherine, a nurse, 1915. Worked with Voss, vanished after Clara's death. Rumoured to be his accomplice." Poirot's moustache twitched. An accomplice? Still active? He scanned the deck, noting the crew. Only 2 remained, their faces unfamiliar, caps low. He approached the captain, a wiry man with weathered hands, standing by the bridge. "Monsieur, your crew. Who signalled the shore before Carter's attack?" The captain frowned, checking a roster. "Carter was alone on signals. The others were below, securing cargo." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the small boat in the cove, seen from the island. Who manned it?" The captain hesitated. "No boat was logged. Could have been a smuggler, or—" He trailed off, glancing at Voss, now being led to a police van. Poirot returned to the lounge, his mind racing. A nurse, Catherine, tied to Clara's death, possibly, signalling from the mainland. He addressed the guests, his tone firm. "The letter K, it points to a shadow from Voss's past. Someone who knows the island's secrets. Speak, if you know her." Miss Grant gasped, her voice trembling. "Catherine. Clara mentioned her. A nurse who gave her the locket said it would keep her safe, but it didn't." Her eyes filled with tears, and Poirot nodded, a piece clicking into place. The locket, a gift from an accomplice. Guilt or manipulation? He moved to Voss, now seated in the van, officers at his side. "Dr. Catherine, who is she to you?" Voss's eyes gleamed, a spark of his old arrogance. "A ghost, Poirot, like all my echoes. You chase air." But his fingers twitched, betraying unease. Poirot pressed on. "She signalled the ferry, ensured your trap's final act. Where is she?" Voss leaned forward, voice low. "Closer than you think, detective. The trap never ends." A shout broke the moment. An officer waved from the dock, holding a soaked bundle. Poirot hurried over, finding a cloak identical to the attacker's tangled with seaweed. Inside, a pocket, a photograph. A woman in a nurse's uniform, her face sharp, eyes cold. Catherine. The officer pointed to the water. "Found it floating, like it was tossed from the ferry." Poirot's heart quickened. Catherine was here, or had been. He scanned the crowd, passers-by, police, a few curious dock workers. A woman in a grey coat lingered at the edge, her back to him, hair tucked under a scarf. She moved swiftly, vanishing, into an alley. Poirot gave chase, his cane clicking on the cobblestones. The alley was narrow, lined with crates, the air thick with fish and salt. At its end, the woman turned, her face partially lit by a street lamp, older but matching the photograph. "Catherine," Poirot called, his voice steady. She froze, then smiled, a mirror of Voss's cold charm. "You're persistent, Monsieur Poirot, but the game's over. Voss failed, and I'm done hiding." She dropped a small device, a remote signaller, its lights dead. "The lamp was my last order, to warn him you'd won." Poirot stepped closer, his cane raised. "You helped him kill Clara, Thorne's son, others. Why?" Catherine's smile faded. "Science at first. We wanted to unlock the mind. But Voss, he craved control. I stayed to protect what was left. Records, lives. Clara was an accident, but I gave Elena the locket to remember. Her voice cracked, and she tossed the signaler to him. Take it. I'll face the courts. Poirot caught it, his mind piecing together the final threads. Catherine's signals, the butler's blade, Voss's machine, all parts of a twisted symphony. He escorted her to the police, who took her into custody alongside Voss. The guests watched, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. Miss Grant approached, her locket in hand. She gave me this to remember Clara. But it was guilt, wasn't it? Poirot nodded gently. Guilt, mademoiselle, is a heavy echo. Let it rest now. As the police vans drove off, Poirot gathered the guests one last time. The trap is broken, mes amis. Your truths, Clara, your son, your debts, your childhood, have freed you. Return to your lives, but carry the truth lightly. Reed clutched his notebook, ready to publish. Lady Thorne smiled faintly, her prayers answered. The twins held hands, their guilt aired. Hale muttered thanks, his shame easing. Miss Grant tucked the locket away, a step toward healing. The mainland's lights glowed brighter, a promise of safety. But Poirot's eyes lingered on the sea, where the island's shadow faded. Had he caught every echo, or did one still whisper? The trap is dismantled, but a final question lingers. Has Poirot truly silenced all echoes, or does one remain? The final chapter awaits, where closure beckons. Chapter 10. The final truth. The Southampton dock buzzed with activity as Hercule Poirot stood under the glow of street lamps, the sea breeze sharp against his neatly pressed suit. The police vans had carried Dr. Elias Voss and Catherine, his accomplice, into the night, their fates now in the hands of justice. The guests, Miss Eleanor Grant, Professor Harlan Reed, Lady Beatrice Thorne, the twins Alex and Alexa Crowe, and Reginald Hale, stood nearby, their faces a tapestry of relief, exhaustion, and lingering unease. The island's grip was broken, its machine silenced, its logbook and Catherine's confession exposing years of psychological torment. Yet Poirot's grey cells hummed, sensing a final echo, a truth still hidden, a shadow uncast. He adjusted, his moustache, his eyes scanning the group, the dock, the fading silhouette of the ferry. The trap was not fully sprung until every secret was laid bare. Poirot gathered the guests near a weathered bench, away from the police and curious onlookers. Mes amis, he said, his voice steady but commanding. We have unravelled Voss's web, his machine, his voices, his crimes. Clara Grant, Lady Thorne's son, and others fell to his experiments, masked as science. Catherine, his nurse, enabled him, her guilt sealed in a locket. But one question remains. Why did Voss choose us? Why this game, this island, this moment? The guests shifted, eyes darting. Miss Grant clutched her broken locket, her voice soft. For Clara, maybe, to taunt me. Reed shook his head, holding his notebook. He wanted my research exposed, to ruin me. Lady Thorne murmured, My son's death, he mocked my grief. The twins spoke in unison. Our childhood mistake, he used it. Hale grunted, My debts, he owned me. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. Each truth is a thread, but the tapestry is incomplete. Voss said the trap was me, my pride, my need to solve. Yet his game began before I arrived. He turned to the dock, where the small boat from the island's cove had been towed ashore. its hull gleaming wet. A police officer approached, holding a sealed envelope found inside, marked with the labyrinth symbol and Poirot's initials. "Found this tucked in the boat's hull, sir," the officer said. Poirot opened it, his heart quickening. Inside, a single page in Voss's elegant script. "The final echo is yours, Poirot. You failed her long ago. Find her, or the trap lives, her." Poirot's mind raced through his cases, his failures, few, but sharp. A name surfaced, faint but persistent. Marie Dubois, a young woman from a Paris case in 1905, lost to a cult's hypnotic rituals. Poirot had saved her brother, but Marie vanished, her mind broken by techniques eerily similar to Voss's. Had Voss known her? He turned to Miss Grant, his voice urgent. "Mademoiselle Clara, did she ever mention a Marie or Paris?" Eleanor's eyes widened. "Once, in a letter, she said a woman Marie warned her about Voss, gave her the locket before disappearing. I thought it was a delusion." Poirot's gaze shifted to Reed. "Your notebook, monsieur. Any mention of Marie Dubois?" Reed flipped through, his bruised fingers trembling. "Here. 1905. Paris. Voss studied under a Dr. Moreau, hypnosis expert. A patient, Monsieur Dubois, escaped but was deemed unstable." Poirot's blood chilled. Marie, a victim of Voss's early work, had tried to save Clara, leaving the locket as a warning. But why target Poirot now? He faced the group, his voice rising. "Voss's trap was personal, a revenge for my interference. Marie Dubois, a case I could not close, linked me to him. He lured us here to break us, to prove his mastery over the mind." He turned to the twins. "You, mesdemoiselles, played in his experiments as children, unaware of their cost. Clara was your victim, an accident you buried." Alex nodded, tears falling. "We turned the dials thinking it was a game. She screamed and we ran." Alexa clutched her charm. "Voss made us forget, but the guilt stayed." Poirot addressed Lady Thorne. "Your son, madame, died under Voss's care, a test of auditory overload. You came to confront him, yes?" She nodded, her rosary still. "I wanted answers, but he twisted my grief. To Hale he said, 'Your debts funded his island, but you saw his crimes and stayed silent.' Hale hung his head. 'I had no choice. He'd ruin me.' Finally, to Miss Grant, 'Your sister, Clara, was Voss's failure, a mind he broke too far. The locket from Marie was her warning, and yours.' Poirot paced, the pieces aligning. Catherine, the nurse, carried out his orders, signalling the ferry to delay us, wielding the blade to sow fear. The butler was her pawn, coerced by promises of freedom. But Voss's true target was me, to make me doubt, to relive Marie's loss." He stopped, facing the group. "The final echo is this. Voss wanted us to destroy ourselves, to let guilt and fear consume us. But we stand here united, his trap broken." A soft clap broke the silence. An officer approached, holding a photograph from the boat. "Found. This with the letter, sir." It showed Marie Dubois, older, her face lined but alive, standing on a Paris street, dated 1920. A note on the back read, "I survived, Poirot. Voss did not." Poirot's heart lifted. Marie had escaped, her warning to Clara a final act of defiance. Voss's revenge was built on a lie. Poirot had not failed her entirely. He turned to the guests, his voice warm. "Mes amis, the echoes are silent. Marie lived. Clara is avenged. Your truths are free. Return to your lives." But carry this lesson. The mind is strong when truth guides it. Miss Grant smiled faintly, tucking her locket away. Reed vowed to publish his findings. Lady Thorne kissed her rosary, at peace. The twins held hands, their guilt aired. Hale muttered thanks, his debts no longer a chain. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, watching the sea. The island was a speck now, its menace gone. He boarded a cab to London, the logbook and photograph in his valise, ready for Scotland Yard. The trap was over, every secret laid bare. Clara's death, Marie's survival, Voss's vendetta, Catherine's complicity, the twins' accident, Thorne's loss, Hale's shame, Poirot's pride, tested, had held. And so, the final echo fades. If you've been gripped by this tale of minds and mysteries, grab a cup of tea and join us for more. Hit that subscribe button and comment below. Your support means the world to us.